Right, so you've decided you're moving. Brilliant, exciting stuff. And then about 5 minutes later, the question turns up that stops most people dead. Do you sell your current place first, or do you find the new one first? It sounds like a small logistical detail, doesn't it? But get this one wrong, and you could end up homeless in a hotel with your furniture in storage, or stuck holding two mortgages at once, or watching the house of your dreams get snapped up by someone who was ready to go. Get it right, and the whole thing can be almost civilized. There's no single correct answer here, and anyone who tells you there is hasn't actually done this for a living. What there is a right answer for your situation, and that's once you understand how each route actually plays out. Think of it a bit like the towel in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Knowing where your towel is doesn't stop the universe throwing chaos at you, but it does mean you're ready for it rather than panicking on the spot. That's what today is, your towel, for the sell first or buy first question. So that's what we're doing here in this video. Sell first or buy first. The honest version, chains, bridging, stamp duty surcharges, a lot. So you can walk into this with your eyes open rather than your fingers crossed. So let's start with selling first, because for most homeowners in the UK, this is still the safer, more common route. And there's a good reason for that. When you sell first, you know your number. You know exactly how much you're walking away with, which means you know exactly what you can afford to offer on the next place. No guessing, no stretching, no nasty surprise when a lender values things differently. It's the tidiest way to buy with confidence, and it's the version of the decision that lets you sleep at night. It also makes you a much stronger buyer. An estate agent looks at two offers on a house from someone who's sold subject to contract, with a buyer already lined up, and one from someone who hasn't even put their own place on the market yet. 9 times out of 10, they'll favour the one who's already sold, because there's less that can go wrong between an offer and completion. You become the buyer everyone wants to deal with, and in a competitive market, that alone can be the difference between winning a house and losing it to somebody with a tidier position than yours. But here's the sting, and it's the bit people don't plan for: the gap. Once you've accepted an offer on your home, you're in sold subject to contract limbo. You don't have a house to move into yet, and you can't exactly hang around looking for months because your buyer's waiting, and buyers get twitchy if a chain doesn't move. So you're often house hunting under a real time pressure, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to be doing when you're making one of the biggest decisions of your life. And if you don't find somewhere in time, you could well wind up in rented accommodation for a stretch, which means moving twice, paying removal costs twice, putting your belongings in storage and living out of boxes for longer than anyone would choose. It's not a disaster. Plenty of people do it and come out of the other side fine, but it's an extra cost and an extra upheaval that's easy to underestimate when you're excitedly accepting that first offer. Or alternatively, your buyer just gets fed up waiting and pulls out, and you're back to square one. Except now, everyone else in the local market's seen your house sit under offer and wonders why it fell through. So selling first gives you certainty on the money and strength as a buyer, at the cost of time pressure and the risk of a gap in the middle. Worth it for plenty of people. Just go in knowing that's the trade rather than discovering it 3 weeks into a hotel stay. So now let's flip it. Buying first means you find your next home, agree it, and only then do you sell your current one. Or you wind up owning both for a period of time. The upside is obvious: no house hunting under pressure, no risk of ending up in rented limbo between homes, and you get first pick of whatever's out there rather than racing the clock. If you've found the one, that place with the garden that actually gets the afternoon sun, buying first means you don't lose it while you wait for your own sale to catch up. The catch is money. And it's a bigger catch than most people expect. Owning 2 properties at once, even briefly, means funding a purchase before your existing equity is freed up. And that's where bridging finance and let-to-buy arrangements come in, both of which we'll get to properly in a minute, because the numbers matter, and I don't want to wave a vague hand at them and hope you don't ask a follow-up question. There's also a tax wrinkle worth knowing from day one. If you wind up completing on a new home before you sell the old one, you'll usually be classed as owning an additional property, which triggers the extra stamp duty surcharge on top of the normal bands. The good news is that that surcharge is usually refundable if you sell your previous main home within a set window afterwards. So it's not necessarily a permanent extra cost, but it does mean finding a genuinely large lump of cash up front, on top of everything else you're already juggling. We'll cover those actual numbers later on in this video. So buying first buys you certainty on a new home, and takes the pressure off house hunting, at the potential cost of needing bridging finance and a stamp duty surcharge you'll need to claim back later. Different trade, same coin, and which side lands face up depends entirely on your numbers. So whichever route you take, you're almost certainly moving inside a chain. A whole string of buyers and sellers all depending on each other completing roughly the same day. And the chains are where the theory meets the real world. And quite often they don't meet gently. A chain doesn't break because one big dramatic event. It breaks because of small boring things arriving at the worst possible moment, a bit like dominoes, except someone keeps quietly adding an extra domino you didn't know was there. A survey on a house 3 links down the chain flags an issue and that buyer wants to renegotiate. A solicitor goes on leave and nobody picked up a file. A mortgage offer expires because the completion slipped by a fortnight and nobody chased the renewal in time. Somebody's identity documents don't quite match what the lender needs. And the whole chain sits there, waiting on one piece of paperwork while everyone assumes somebody else is dealing with it. I've genuinely seen a completion held up by nothing more dramatic than an ID verification snag on a family member's passport, buried in the middle of an otherwise straightforward chain. Nobody's fault but a big drama. And that's just the sort of tiny little thing that quietly stalls everyone above and below it in the chain if nobody's actively chasing it down. And it's exactly the kind of thing that gets solved with one phone call to the right person once somebody actually makes that call. And that's really the whole game with chains. They don't fail because of one big problem. They stall because of lots of little small ones that nobody's actively managing. The chains that complete smoothly aren't the ones with no problems, because there's no such thing as a chain with 0 problems. They're the ones where someone is on the phone every week to every link, keeping things moving before a small snag becomes a 6-week delay. Now, there are a couple of shortcuts that are worth knowing about because they solve the sell first or buy first dilemma by sidestepping it altogether, but it's at a price. Firstly, part exchange, mostly offered by new build developers, means the developer effectively buys your current home from you as part of the deal on their new one. It's fast, it's clean, and it removes the chain entirely because you're not waiting on a buyer of your own. The price for that is certainly what you'd expect. You'll typically get less than the full market value for your existing home because the developer is pricing it into their own risk and profit. And it's worth genuinely comparing that shortfall against the stress and cost of the alternative before you sign anything. Quick sale companies work on a similar principle for any type of property, not just new build. They offer speed and certainty, cash in a matter of weeks rather than months, and in return, they'll usually offer meaningfully below market value, sometimes well below market value. This route can make sense in a genuine emergency, a job relocation with a hard deadline, a chain collapse that needs rescuing fast, but it's rarely the right call if you've got any flexibility on your timing at all. Both of these are trading pounds for certainty and speed. And that can be exactly the right trade in the right circumstances. Just make sure you're doing the sums properly rather than reaching out for it in a panic. Because panic decisions in property tend to be expensive ones, and the company on the other end of that phone call knows it. Right, so let's talk pounds and pence, because vague reassurance doesn't pay a solicitor's bill. Bridging finance is short-term borrowing that lets you complete on a new home before your old one has sold, using the equity in your current property and sometimes the new one as well as security. It's genuinely useful for buying first, but it isn't cheap. And it isn't a long-term product. It's designed to be paid off quickly once your sale completes, not left running for years like a normal mortgage. Typically, bridging rates currently run roughly in the region of about 0.5 to 1.5% per month, depending on your loan-to-value, exit strategy and credit profile. And that's on top of arrangement fees, valuation costs, and sometimes even an exit fee. That's a meaningful monthly cost while it's running, which is exactly why bridging works best with clear, realistic exit, meaning a sale you're genuinely confident will complete within the defined time window, not a hopeful guess dressed up as a plan. And then there's Let to Buy, which is a different tool for a similar problem. Rather than selling your current home, you remortgage it onto a buy-to-let basis and rent it out. And that frees up equity to put towards the new purchase while keeping the old property as an investment. It suits people who quite fancy becoming a landlord anyway, or who aren't ready to say goodbye to the old place just yet. It comes with its own affordability rules and rental cover calculations, and it's worth flagging honestly, most buy-to-let mortgages are not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority in the same way a residential mortgage is. And then there's the stamp duty surcharge that we've already touched on. As things stand at the moment, buying an additional residential property in England and Northern Ireland while still owning your previous main home typically attracts a higher rate surcharge on top of the standard bands, and that's usually refundable if you sell your previous main residence within a set time window. Those thresholds and rates do move. Governments do like to tinker with stamp duty. So rather than have you budget off some number that I quote today, that may well be out of date by the time you watch this, go to the government's own stamp duty calculator on gov.uk, Put in your exact numbers and it'll give you the correct figure for your situation in about 30 seconds. The honest summary on this is that buying first can absolutely work, but budget properly for the bridging cost and the surcharge, and know your exit before you commit, not after. So sell first or buy first. Here's how I talk clients through it, because it isn't really a coin toss, it's a handful of honest questions. How hot is your local market? If houses in your area are flying off within days of listing, buying first without a sale agreed is a real gamble, because you might not have shifted your own place fast enough once you've committed. If things move slowly and gently where you are, buying first is much less risky, because you've got breathing room either way. How much cash and flexibility do you actually have? If bridging finance or a stamp duty surcharge sitting on your finances for a few months would keep you up at night, that tells you something important. Selling first with its certainty on the money is probably the calmer route for you. And how much do you need speed and certainty on the new home versus certainty on your finances? If you found a genuinely rare property, one that won't come round again, buying first protects it. If your priority is a clean, stress-free number to work with, selling first protects that instead. And if you've got kids and a school place to think about, that timing pressure often tips the whole decision on its own. It's worth thinking honestly rather than pretending that these things aren't a factor. And this is the bit where I'd genuinely rather sit down with you rather than have you guess this stuff alone. Because the right answer depends entirely on your numbers, your local market, and your appetite for risk. Not on a rule that works for everybody. And once you've picked a route, my part in it doesn't stop at the mortgage offer. I stay in the background the whole way through, chasing the solicitors every week, translating the legal jargon back into plain English, untangling those small snags before they become the kind of 6-week delay we've talked about earlier. It needs to be Team Wakeman buying that house, not a client and a broker sat across the table from each other. If you're weighing this up right now, message me and let's work out which route genuinely suits your numbers. So practically speaking, before you do anything else, get a proper mortgage agreement in principle sorted, so you know your real number and you can move the instant you need to. Whichever route you choose, have an honest conversation with your current lender or your broker, that's me by the way, about whether bridging or let to buy genuinely stacks up for your situation before you fall for the house that needs one of them. Get your solicitor lined up and ready to instruct the moment you need them, rather than starting that search once you're already under pressure and everyone good is booked up. And if you're weighing up part exchange or a quick sale, get a proper market valuation first, so you know exactly what you'll be giving up for the speed, and can decide with your eyes open rather than your fingers crossed. Whichever way you go, sell first for certainty on the money, buy first for certainty on the home. The moves that go smoothly are the ones where someone did the sums honestly before committing, and had someone chasing the details all the way through. That's exactly the conversation I have with my clients every week, and I'd generally rather have that conversation before you're mid-chain than after. So I'm Patrick Wakeman, your local East Midlands mortgage and protection advisor, serving clients up and down the UK. Drop me a like and a follow for more and hit the links in my bio to get in touch. Quick note before I go, think carefully before securing debt against your home. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.